Hello everybody, Reggie Time here, and this is the first video in what is going to be a new series of my playing the Nanostakes on probably just Skype Poker, but maybe some other sites too. And the reason I'm doing this is because most of the players that I work with and most of the players that come to me are playing a range of stakes from 4NL through 10NL mostly, and most of the players that come to me are struggling to beat those games. There's a very big, very large, that's really bad English, there's a very large amount of people out there that are semi-decent at poker, but that aren't beating these games. And we're going to use this series to talk about the reasons why people aren't beating them and why maybe you're not beating them. I think there are a number of different reasons depending on the player type. But as we get into spots during hands, I'm going to try and talk about not just what I'm going to do, but also going to try and talk about the mistakes that I think you or people like you might be making that's preventing you from having a good win rate in these games and giving you the opportunity to push yourself into the higher limits. So yeah, when we're talking about hands, we're going to be talking about what I believe we should do and what I believe are common mistakes people are making in the same spots. So hopefully we'll have plenty to talk about, but I am a little bit conscious that we are just true tabling, and who knows if there could be some spots where not much is happening, but hopefully we can still have plenty to talk about between hands. So I'm just calling here with the King Queen suited. There's no reason to squeeze. We want to try and keep anyone who's weak in the pot, and we have Pulsar and KC here, who both have less than 100 big blind stacks. If we were to squeeze there, which is a mistake I think some people make, because King Queen suited is a very playable hand. I think squeezing there, what's usually going to happen is we're going to, at the face of 4-bet from out of law, is going to fold, or Pulsar and KC will both maybe call, and then we're going to hit the flop just 30% of the time. We're not going to have great c-betting opportunities because of the stack to pot ratio that's left. I'm going to put a reasonable size 3-bet in here, because when we have a limper and then another player min-raise a limper, it's a good indication that both these guys are going to be bad. But we need to be not scared of making the pot bigger here. I mean, now we're just going to fold because I think, oh, now we're going to, yes, I think now we're just going to fold. And this, wow, that time bank is quick. Seems quicker than normal. Because when Kif just takes that line, he's usually going to be very, very, very close to the top of his range. But yeah, the point I was going to make there is we can't be afraid to not put a 3-bet in there. There's not enough money in the pot. We can certainly get called by worse hands, as Casey was kind enough to demonstrate for us there. And we need to embrace variance a little. A mistake most of the players I play with there would just be calling with their 2-10s. And then missing value post-flop, playing a little bit scared, or sometimes maybe even overvaluing the hand post-flop when too much money goes in. And I think what we need to be doing in these games is there we had a weak player limping. We had another probably weak player just min-raise him. Nothing much has happened there to make us scared. So we need to be 3-betting for value, but capable of laying down when it's pretty obvious that we're not going to be in great shape. I think people are just too scared. They want to try and play just too perfectly. So here, I think a lot of players would check back here, reasoning that it's hard for them to get called by worse. This is a micro stakes, and who knows what worse hands he can call with. People like Pulsar, who's looking like he's going to be a weak player, could very easily look us up with a hand as weak as 2-5s there, or 2-7s, 9-8. I mean, who knows what hands he can have. missing value is unquestionably one of the biggest leaks that most players that come to me have, and they don't even know they have it. I mean, sometimes people are aware of some of their leaks. They're aware that maybe they pay off too much, or they're aware that maybe they bluff a little bit too much, or anything like that. But the leaks people don't realise is leaks they have when they win pots, by checking back strands that are too strong, or by making too small a value bet. That kind of thing, but they don't realise they made a mistake by not betting large enough or by not betting at all, because they've won the pot, so they're nowhere near as bothered. Don't be that player. Always be sat there thinking, can I get value? Can I get value? Can I get value? You need to be constantly evaluating the situation that you're in. Don't just switch off when you're on the river and you've got a hand like top pair mid kicker. Don't just switch off and think, oh, I can show down now. That isn't going to be good enough. You should be thinking, what does my opponent's range look like? How many worse hands are going to call here? And if you think there's a decent number of worse hands that can call, if you think he's going to call with a worse hand 50% or more of the time, you should absolutely be making a bet. And if you're not making a bet after having made that assessment, you're making a pretty big mistake. But again, it's a mistake that you don't think you're making, because you've just won the pot and you're happy to have won the pot. So you just be a little bit result orientated. Oh, I won, that's all that matters. Or I won and he showed down his third pair, so he wouldn't have called anyway. How do you know he wouldn't have called? That's something I hear a lot when I don't criticise players, but when I question players' pretty weak checkbacks, and their common response is he couldn't have called anyway with that hand. Really? If they couldn't have called with that hand, why aren't we bluffing a lot more? And the simple answer is because we know they call with those hands. That's why we don't bluff too much, because we know people don't fold second pair. They don't fold third pair. Who knows? Hell knows. They maybe don't even fold under pairs sometimes, under pair pocket pairs. That's why we don't just constantly bluff, because people do call too much. So here we're going to isolate this limp pair and we're going to make it pretty big. Don't be scared of making the isolation races too big. I mean, I think we could have even gone to 6x there and been absolutely fine. We have a strong value hand. We have a player limped in the pot. Let's just start pumping some money into the pot. And here we're just going to make a really big value bet, because there's absolutely loads of worse hands that can call here. I mean, if he has any jack, he's probably not folding. If he has the jack of diamonds, he's not folding. If he has some other weaker diamonds, he's probably not folding. This is another mistake that a lot of the players that come to me regularly make. They don't isolate with hands like this. Fair enough, we've been 3-bet here. That shouldn't be a reason for you not to try and isolate weak players constantly. We should be constantly looking to try and get heads up against weak players, even with hands as weak as 4-6 suited. Not because we think 4-6 suited is the best hand. It's just because we want to try and give ourselves as many opportunities as possible to be playing pots in position against players that we think we have a significant edge over. It's not like we're going to have to stack off if we flop a pair there or anything silly like that. We have a playable hand. We have a weak player limped in the pot before us. There's absolutely no reason not to isolate there. But I mean, players come to me and I see them there. They're not even isolated hands as strong as Queen 10 suited there, Jack 9 suited, Ace 5 suited, things like that. I mean, we should be isolating really, really wide with all of our playable hands when players have limped into pots in front of us. Because playing pots with players like Owens, with players like Pulsar, with players like Tazdaz, that's going to be where all of our profit's going to come from. It's not going to come necessarily from, and I don't know, Fistful Dollar. He may be a bad player for all I know, but we're going to presume he's not a bad player at the moment because he's got over 100 blinds. They're not going to come from players like that as much. Sure, we might have an edge over Fistful Dollar. Who knows? we could very easily have an edge over him. But my point being is that it's not going to come from regulars. Um, I hear so many people say, "Oh, I have to learn to beat regulars." Yeah, maybe it's nice to learn to beat regulars. Of course it is. But man, we need to be learning to beat fish first. Learning to beat fish before learning to beat regulars is incredibly important. It's because beating the fish is where all our easy money is going to come from. It's what's going to pad our win rate whilst we learn to beat regulars. Um, Constantly, people who don't want to leave PokerStars constantly use the excuse to me, I need to be playing against better players. If I want to improve, I need to be playing against good players. Absolute poppycock. We can improve just as much by playing against 3 good players at a table as we can by playing against 4, or by playing against 2, or even playing against 1. The first and foremost thing we need to be doing when playing poker is putting ourselves into super profitable positions. The best way to do that whilst we're a beginning player or a losing player or a break-even player is to put ourselves in games where we have a significant edge. We learn how to push our edge. We learn how to value bet. We increase our confidence. And then when we've done all those things, we're going to be in a much better position, a much stronger position to be able to tango with regulars, to be able to get involved in pots with regulars. I see so many excuses for people for having poor game selection, having poor, couldn't value bet this hand, couldn't value bet that hand, and usually it's because their game selection is poor and they can't value bet certain hands because they feel they're up against more skilled players who can't call as much. Do yourself a favour and put yourself in good games. So unfortunately we're not getting too many playable hands at the moment. And again, this when we have a low volume and hopefully reasonably aggressive bankroll management strategy, which is kind of the strategy I recommend players that come to me take. Say for example you're currently a 5-0 player on who knows what PokerStars, and we'll come back to this point in a minute. It could be min 3 bet by Pulsar here. We could 4 bet for value, but I don't think we're going to get our money in too great. So this is a situation where calling out of position with a strong but not fantastic hand is absolutely fine because we're in the pot against 2 weak players. When this Ockme just open ships the flop there and we haven't improved, then folding's the only option. And now I've lost my train of thought in what I... Yes, when you are playing on a site like PokerStars and you're playing, I don't know, 5-L and you have a bankroll of maybe, who knows, $150. My default first piece of advice to those players is let's come and find a softer site and let's try and play a little bit higher. If you've got $150, or maybe let's call it £150 because I want to talk about Sky. If you've got 15 buy-ins for 10-L on a site like Sky, and you've been breaking even on a site like PokerStars at 5-L, or on a site like Full Tilt, 888, one of the iPoker skins, anything like that, you're almost certainly going to have enough skill to beat 10-L games on sites like Sky, on sites like Unibet, maybe even on sites like 888. So my usual first piece of advice to these players is let's drop the amount of tables you're playing. Let's start thinking really, really hard about all the hands we're playing. Let's get rid of all our silly autopilot mistakes. And let's do it whilst playing slightly higher limits to help your focus. And that might seem like backwards logic to anyone who is currently just breaking even at 5-0 thinking, wow, what an idiot this guy is. He's actually now advising that I move up in stakes and when I'm not beating the limit I'm at. But there is an absolute world of difference between playing 5-0 on a tough site and playing 10-0 or higher on a soft site. And a 3-bet here with the Jack 9 to isolate Occamy, because I have a feeling Occamy's going to be a bad player. And I don't really want to go multi-way when I've got two people behind me who I suspect probably more reggy, because they're both at both tables. Wow, this time back is ridiculously fast. Now I'm just going to value bet my 2 pair. If you can hear any background noise, do apologise. We have a kitten, and she is just going absolutely bananas. And it's been a really bad run out here against Occamy, so this is one of the situations where I think it's absolutely fine to check back here, because it really is hard to get caught by worse. But we did win the pot. So the point there against Occamy is I suspect he's going to be one of the weaker players. So I want him to myself. I don't want to share him with Fistful Dollar or figured out how to say his name now, or Al too much. It's a slightly different here when I decided to just flat call against his pot size open, because wow. I'm just going to fold here. The ready playable hand, but I'm just going to fold. The reason I didn't 3-bet that time was because the first time he min opened, therefore it made it an inexpensive isolation, or less expensive isolation. When he pots it, it's going to cost me a lot more to isolate him, and on top of that, even if he's just 4-bet shoves on me, I'm putting way too much money in with a hand that probably can't call. So that was a very different situation. So please don't think I'm being hypocritical, but look, here he goes again now with his min open. He clearly has an awful lot of leaks, and we can absolutely exploit him for those leaks by going after when he's small, and presuming when he opens smaller, his hands are going to be weaker. When he opens larger, they're going to be stronger. That might not be accurate, but I think it's a reasonable assumption to make at first. So yes, to go back to the point about how I try and encourage players to change their approach when they first come to me, if they're coming to me from one of the tougher sites. And it may seem insane for me to say, instead of practicing really good bankroll management, let's just take a little punt. Let's just try and play soft games, 2 tabling off 15 to 20 buy-ins. But it works. It does just work. Yeah, of course, I mean, we have a slightly higher risk of ruin. But by the same token, you just took a huge step in the right direction. You've gone looking for help for your game, and you've now just put yourself on a way softer site. So you can reasonably expect your results to turn around pretty quickly. Of course, we're still at the mercy of random variance. Of course we are. But it's still, I think it's a safe or fair assumption that your results are going to improve pretty quickly when you start getting help from somebody like me and start playing on a softer site straight away, and on top of that, start playing a manageable amount of tables that allow you to really use every ounce of poker skill that you have, which is much harder to do when you are playing maybe too many tables. I mean, if you go from playing maybe 500 hands an hour to going down to playing 200 hands an hour, the quality of your decision making is going to be significantly improved. So let's put all that together. You're going to be making significantly improved decisions. You're going to be playing on a much softer site, and you're going to be game selecting much harder and actually playing on much better tables for you. All of those things come together, and they almost certainly turn a break-even 5-0 player on a tough site into a winning 10-0 player on a softer site, without question. That's just what's going to happen to most people. Again here, Occamy's potted it, so I'm way less likely to 3-bet him, and Al's out with the pot already. Pulsar is in the pot. He could easily come along with worse here. I don't particularly want Pulsar to fold anything when I'm in the pot. So again, it's my reason for not 3-betting. And when I'm going to flop this, I mean, I'm just going to have to go broke here. If anyone bets, I'm just going to have to raise. Because we just have way too much equity to do anything else. I'm kind of hoping that the other two guys get out of the pot here, because if one of these two guys comes along, we're not going to be in good shape. I mean, but there we go. This is why we want to be playing pots in position against players like Okami, because they're just going to make mistakes like that constantly. I mean, that happens on a 20-minute or half-hourly basis. And just try to play as many pots with the players that you've identified as being the weakest is going to be super, super profitable. And you, again, when you're playing less tables, you get to identify these spots way, way, way more often. You identify them way more efficiently. Everything about what you're doing becomes so much more crystallised. And eventually maybe we can go stepping back up playing 3 or 4 tables, or who knows. Maybe you'll eventually get your game to a spot where you feel you can go back and increase your hourly by then maybe playing lots and lots of tables again. Knowing that you've actually now got a game you can fall back on, and your autopilot game, for want of a better way of putting it. And I don't think anyone should ever play on autopilot, but if your autopilot game is good enough to beat the games that you're in for, and do it at high volume, maybe that might be the best decision for you. It's not something I recommend, but for some players it just works. But we need to get the chickens in line, and we need to become confident and competent before we try and play high volume. I'm just going to fold here when I get min raised. Not much else I can do there. I mean, we could easily be getting bluffed or semi-bluffed, but I mean, I've got an ace with an 8 kicker. There's just no reason to stick around there, and I think a lot of weaker players would just stick around there for the min raise. I think if we're in position, we can consider sticking around more, because at least we get to see what happens on the turn before our decision point comes. But I think when we're out of position and we've led out with a hand like top pair, weak kicker, and we get min raised, I think folding's fine. A lot of players will say to me, "Are we not exploitable when we just fold there to a min raise?" Yeah, we probably are. My counter argument is though that we're just not going to be getting exploited anywhere near enough by players like Taz, who I expect to be very weak. So we don't have to worry about being exploited if we're playing against players who aren't going to be looking to exploit us very much. There's just less reason to be worried about being exploited. I'm going to go for a delayed c-bet here against Taz. We don't need to just auto c-bet all of the time. And I'm going to raise here. And we'll talk about why I'm going to raise in a minute, because the time bank is so quick at these micro-stakes games that I just want to make sure that we get the bets and raise in. The reason to raise there, I mean, I see a bunch of players that will just call there because they don't want to get blown off their equity share or whatever, or they're scared of the 3-bet coming in. But we can raise there just because his line is just so weak. I'm going to bet for value here with my jack, no kicker. I think we can definitely get called by Jack 1942. With worse hands, with draws, worse pairs. Not many worse jacks, I guess, but you can certainly call with a hand like 2 9s, 2 10s, that kind of thing. When the 4 of spade comes, I'm just going to shut down now. A lot of his hands that you call with are going to be King X, better jacks, draws, that kind of thing. Yeah, I'm just going to fold. And really, paying off is the nut worst in these games. I'm going to 3-bet for value with my King Queen. And I'm going to fold to a 4-bet. People are scared to 3-bet these hands because they don't want to call 4-bets with them, or they don't want to face a 4-bet. But just take value now. We can get value now from Taz and Lebster. When Lebster goes to the limp shove, he's pretty much always going to have aces or kings or something like that there. And if he doesn't have those hands, we'll find out pretty quickly because he'll be doing it way too often. It's the first time I've done it. I'm going to give him credit for having a hand like 2 aces or 2 kings. If he was to frequently limp shove, then I would absolutely relax my calling requirements against him. But again, I think 3-betting there versus a limp and a min raise is going to be very profitable. But it's something that a lot of weaker players don't do. Because they're scared of being shut out of the pot like I was then. It doesn't matter if we get shut out of the pot when we're kind of just in the middle of our range for doing something like that. It's not the end of the world, particularly against players who aren't frequently going to be shutting us out of the pot and exploiting us. So try not to worry too much about it. Table 2 here appears to have gone pretty sour, so I'm probably going to pause the video in a second, try and get a better table up. And before I got a chance to switch the table out, a player that I have a green tag on was kind enough to come and sit to my direct right, so I decided not to switch the table out. So yeah, just to get back to the points that we're making for the purpose of the video, we are looking to talk about spots where I think intermediate, or who knows where I sat out there, sorry about that, where intermediate or perhaps slightly worse than intermediate players are frequently making mistakes. And not always big mistakes, but we're trying to talk about the small mistakes that people make. I'm just going to check call here for the time being. I think his range for c-betting there, for min c-betting, is going to be incredibly weak. But he may just be really, really bad at bet sizing. So we're just going to call again and just try and keep the pot small. I'd rather have seen a 9 there, so we would have had more. Our kicker then would have been counterfeited and become irrelevant. But so let's just see what Taz turned up with there. And Taz, if you watch this video, I mean no offence to you. I don't mean to upset you or offend you, but you probably are one of the weaker players in the game. Yeah, he's had Jack 9 of spades, so he went for really thin value on the flop. His bet size improved slightly on the turn, increased slightly on the turn when he picked up a flush draw, and then he just gave up on the river. I think his line there is fine. I think his sizing's poor on both the flop and the turn, but his line in terms of bet then bet again, I think he's absolutely fine there. It's another situation where I think people will make a mistake, and this is before Taz min donked, of just c-betting this board when we have like the nut nothing, if you will. Taz may well have the best hand here, but when he's just making the mistake of betting just 10 pence every time, I'm not going to be too concerned about it. And now he's just bombed the river. There's no way I'm going to call here. It's way too likely he's going to have a straight or two pair. And yeah, I have absolutely no problem with folding there whatsoever. But it's something I've talked about in previous videos. A question I frequently get asked: how to respond to min donks. And my stock answer is respond to them in the same way that you would respond to a check. And that is to, if you were going to bet versus a check, you should raise the min donk. If you were going to check back, you should just call the min donk. You should never really fold to a min donk. And yeah, that's pretty much it. If you were going to check, call. If you were going to bet, raise. And just treat it like it hasn't happened. Just treat it as if the player's checked. I isolated pretty loose here with the 5-3, as you can tell. I mean, as you can see, it's a really loose open. I'm not going to bluff once I pick up 3 callers. The whole purpose of the race was to try and claim isolation against Owens. Once I've failed in that mission to isolate him, I'm not going to compound it by then starting to throw around some really hopeless bluffs on boards like this. I mean, yeah, we've flopped a backdoor straight draw and a good shot, but it's on a board that we're just going to get absolutely, well, not absolutely no folds, but almost no folds. We've been called by 3 people. I think our fold equity is somewhere close to 0. So when we have 0 fold equity and probably just a gut shot to fall back on, it's not going to be a good situation to be betting. So fistful of dollars just cold called us here. He can have some ace-x in his cold calling range, but not a huge amount, unless it's worse than I suspect he is. I mean, he's raised me here. I have no hand, no draw, so I mean, it's just a really easy fold. Not sure what he's raising with there. I mean, we don't have any image. He can't know very much about me at all, so I mean, who knows what he's raising me with there. He's certainly not raising me because he thinks I'm too aggressive, or he shouldn't be, because he won't have enough information on me yet to be making those kinds of decisions. I mean, if I had to guess, if I had to range him there, I don't think he'd be racing just a pair of aces. So I think he's either going to have sets or flush draws most of the time, and airballs occasionally. He puts me in a much tougher spot there when I have a hand like two kings or two queens or something. But then I maybe wouldn't have c-bet them, so yeah. And this is another thing that people do too often in the micros. They read constantly how it's really important to steal all the time, and they raise probably too many hands from the button. Hands like 6-9 off, just fold them when you got the button. We have a player in the blind who we suspect maybe isn't great. So he's not going to fold as much. If he's not going to fold as much, it means we're going to get to showdown more often. If we're going to get to showdown more often against people who don't fold very much, then a hand like 6-9 off is a miserable hand to start that whole procedure with. Just going to call here because my hand's a little bit under-repped. Obviously, when we get called in two spots, we're probably not going to win. So Owens is open this time. We have a very playable hand. I'm just going to call. There's been almost no squeezing in either of these games so far. So I'm not at all worried about getting squeezed, and I get a chance to see a pot in position against a player who I suspect might not be good. Just going to call here with my 2-8. Because I think rare ace is going to come along often enough to make it okay. And we don't have the direct odds or the implied odds really to call against JTM. But we do have, if we believe rare ace is going to come along most of the time, rare ace is giving us all the implied odds that we need. In about 65, I'm going to call once and see if we can get him to slow down on. I'm just going to fold to the limp re-raise. Limp re-raise is something you'll see a lot more of in micro-stakes games, and it usually will be really strong hands. So let's have a look at rare ace here. He's now bet half pot twice. I'm just going to fold because I don't believe people are double barrel bluffing half pot particularly often in micro-stakes games. It's easy to convince ourselves there that, we need to call, we've got a flush draw, if our pair isn't good, we've got a flush draw, etc, etc. I just think it's way too likely that he's going to be value betting there, and if he is value betting, I mean, who knows, he could have a better pair and a flush draw, and a better flush draw, and we could just be in, completely awful shape. I may check raise here against Fistful of Dollar. This is the kind of board he should be c-betting pretty regularly. And we have some backdoor draws, and we have some fold equity. If he doesn't have an ace, he probably needs to be folding here most of the time. And the reason I did it there on that board is because it's a board that regulars are going to c-bet close to 100%. It's ace high, it's pretty dry, so he's going to be c-betting nearly all of his range there. So we can certainly have a decent amount of fold equity on our check raise. And on top of that, when we have the backdoor straight draw and the backdoor flush draw, I think it just gives us enough reason to go for a check raise. And again, that's a spot where too many players that I play with just give up because they're not really thinking about their opponent's range. All they're doing is thinking about their own range. Oh, I've got king 10, I've missed, right, give up, move on. We need to be doing better than that. We need to be thinking about our opponent's ranges and how we can exploit the way they play them. Not going to see bet here against JTM. We don't have that much fold equity against that stack size, and I don't think JTM's the sort of guy who's that into folding. We've just missed. I'm just not happy to fold and move on, but I'm comfortable, very comfortable folding and moving on there. We're going to make nearly all of our money from value betting in these games. And we're not going to make too much money from trying to bluff players like JTM. I mean, I guess with our 2 overs there and our backdoor straight draw, it couldn't be terrible. But just against that stack size, I think he's going to have quite a wide check jamming range, and I don't do well against it. 3 betting here for thin value with my queen. I think we can definitely get caught by pocket pairs, flush draws. make him fold his equity share if he has a hand like ace 10 or something. It's nice just to get him to fold his gut shot on his overcard. Here against JTM, had he limped, I would have not isolated because we already had him isolated. I would have raised and I wouldn't have folded had he gone for a check shove or something like that. Because I've seen other players there just turn up with junk like 6-5, 9-8, who knows what. Just hands that they've kind of just given up with. We're not giving up with the hands, but giving up with the game, and they're sod it. I'm just going to do something stupid now because I'm fed up. I'm going to isolate JTM here, or attempt to isolate him, and I won't be folding if he shoves on me. I won't be happy if he shoves on me, but I won't be folding either. I think isolating a hand like ace 10 here and folding when a player like JTM shoves, it's going to be a pretty significant mistake. And now we're just going to try and get stacks in as quickly as possible. And if he has a 4, well, so be it. I maybe could have bet a little bit smaller there to try and create an illusion of fold equity. So yeah, as we start to wrap the video up, the key points that we've talked about in this video and the key points that I'd like players to take from it is isolate, like make sure you get your isolation races in. Value bet thinner than you're used to value betting. Don't pay off. Don't be afraid to make exploitable folds against players that probably aren't going to be exploiting you very much. And crucially, which is something I've talked about in lots of other videos, give yourself a chance to win. Find games that you can beat comfortably, not just games that you think you have a small edge in. Find games that you think you can probably crush. Get out there and just start crushing them. Don't be dicking around in Nanostakes, fast forward games on tough sites, thinking that volume is the answer to your problems. It probably isn't in most situations. We're very deep here against Fistful Dollar, so we're going to try and flop a set against him. We failed, so we're kind of just done with it now. It's not a big deal. When Fistful Dollar doesn't see bet this board, he almost certainly just has 2 high cards. And now we're getting silly odds against Jack, so I'm just going to call. And I'm not worried about Fistful Dollar here. If Fistful Dollar had, say, gone all in or something there and Jack had folded, I would have probably snapped him off, because I don't believe players like Fistful Dollar miss c-bets with hands like aces, kings, queens, ace, jack, etc. versus players like Jack there too often. I'm just going to call down while Jack's making these silly bet sizes. If he makes a big bet, he's going to fold the river, no problem with it. But whilst he's just betting 30 cents twice, I'm just going to not fold to him, because we're not making a huge mistake there. So don't be worried. Don't think, I need to fold here. He probably has a jack. Maybe he does. But when he's only betting 3 big blinds, he's not exactly punishing us for our weak calls. So yeah, to absolutely put bullet points to not put bullet points, stupid thing to say, just to put exclamation points on the points we talked about in the video. Get in soft games, get beating them. Think about what poker is to you, what you want poker to mean to you. Try and just give yourself a whirl of, let's forget volume for a while. Let's get somewhere and let's just enjoy poker for the pleasure of actually winning for a change, and winning at a big clip. There's nothing more fun in poker than beating games for 10, 12, 15 big blinds, 100, over 20, 30, 40, 50,000 hands. It's an awful lot of fun. It makes you feel like king of the world. It can give you a huge, huge confidence boost that you can then use to propel you into other things. I think most players would do better by following the low volume, better game selection, higher stakes strategy. I think it's a strategy that suits most people. They just don't realise it suits them better, or they've never considered it. They're just so caught up in the whole hamster wheel that the poker has, which is, so many people on forums like 2+2 on Reddit, etc. Oh, you have to be playing 60, 70, 80,000 hands a month. Um, if you can play 100,000 hands a month and have a 3 big blind win rate, you're doing really good. Maybe you are, but you're also having, if excuse the language, a fucking boring time doing it most of the time. And eventually you will just burn out. I mean, I've been playing poker now for close to 12 years, and I've probably burned out twice, maybe 3 times. Both of those times is when I've really, really gone on some crazy volume chase. Um, when I've kind of tried to increase my volume as a substitute for piss poor game selection. We're going to make a small isolation race here against Rhiannon. I mean, we could call this hand and let Taz in the pot too, because we think Taz is pretty poor. But we have a player who's got less than 100 big blinds, and we have a very playable hand, so I think isolating them there is going to be most profitable. It's thin, and then when you donk this pot, I'm just not going to fold here, and if they've been lucky enough to spike 2 jacks on me, or they've got a bigger queen, well then I'm just going to pay them off. I think it's just as likely here that they're going to have a draw or some kind of weak hand. I'm not going to raise there. I'm going to resist the temptation to raise. Because I don't really think we're going to get called by worse too often. And yeah, I'm not happy about calling this river bet here. But I'm just going to call because that was my plan from the off. And yeah, and that's why I'm not going to fold, because people just turn up with dumb stuff like that. And again, it looks like we've stuck out on him with 3-betting with an inferior hand. But what has happened is we've managed to isolate a poor player. We managed to get them in position, and we've managed to capitalise on a huge mistake that they've made. And that's what isolation gives us. It gives us the best opportunity to be the player that capitalises on the pretty big mistakes that weak players are going to make against us on a very, very, very regular basis. So yeah, I hope you've enjoyed this video. I certainly enjoyed making it and talking about the things that I talk about most frequently with my students. I hope you've got something from it. I am a microstakes coach. If you've got this far, hopefully it's because you've enjoyed listening to the kind of things I'm talking about. If you feel you would like to work with me, please do get in touch with me. All my contact details are in the comments section of the video. My rates for a 1-hour session are $35, but those rates can be reduced if for anybody who wants to purchase a block of sessions. Please do get in touch if you would like to talk to me some more. I would love to hear from you. But for now, good luck with your grind. Take care, and yeah, I'll see you all on the next video. Bye for now.